Welcome to another season of Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd, and we are so excited to kick off another season of garden advice and answering your questions. As always, I'm joined on the panel tonight by our experts from Nebraska Extension. The Dean of Backyard Farmer panelists is Bug Guy Fred Baxendale.
Good evening, Kim. It's so great to be back for another season.
And we have Bill Kreuzer answering all the turf questions and the occasional weed question.
Hello, everybody.
We have Rots and Spots himself, Lauren Giesler.
It's always great to be here, Kim.
And of course, Sarah Browning rounds out the panel with all those horticulture questions.
Hi, everybody.
You know, since 1953, we've been answering your gardening questions, and we really are anxious to get started again in this great spring. You get in touch with us by dialing 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 800-676-5446. Our master gardeners and professionals from Finke Gardens are standing by to take your calls. If you have pictures, you can email us at byf@unl.edu. We do answer emails on future shows. And if you send us an email, you've got to tell us as much information as you can, especially where you live in the state. Keep in mind, we can't get to everybody's question on the air, but you can always go to the Backyard Farmer website. You can visit your local extension office, or you can talk to your local garden center professionals for more information. And don't forget, you can always follow Backyard Farmer during the week on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, all those good social media things. So with that out of the way, Fred, you get the first sample, and we have had a lot of questions about this year.
We have, and people have been calling in and asking about what these large brown masses are that they're finding in their shrubs. And these turn out to be the egg masses of the Chinese praying mantis. And of course, praying mantids are beneficial. They eat other insects, and they're certainly ones that we want to conserve in our landscapes. So I've actually brought two in here, but this is the Chinese mantid. It's a very large. We can see it's almost 4 inches in length, and this is the egg mass that they produce to overwinter. So this one is actually viable, and I expect I'll put it back into a little container, and we will rear Chinese mantids out of this. They'll be very tiny at first, then get larger. The other one I wanted to show you is the other mantid that we have in Nebraska, and this is called a Carolina mantid. And you'll notice that the egg mass is really quite different, much smaller. Looks like a miniature loaf of bread, perhaps. But again, these are the two species that you would see most commonly in your landscape. And again, we certainly want to preserve those for their beneficial value.
Perfect, thanks, Fred. I actually had one hatch in my car last year.
Well, that's
not baby mantids all over the place.
Yeah, like a zillion, because there can be up to 200 eggs that hatch.
They were all in my car.
Yes.
All right, Bill, you have one of our most favorite early spring yellow things.
You know, it's a sign of the season when you see the dandelions back flowering. So even though it's a weed that many of you probably know, we control in the fall, we still get a lot of questions, how do I control it this time of year? And the way we control it this time of year is with our back and our hands, and we pull them out. And then after they go to flower and the seed heads have dispersed their seeds, then it's the second best time. If you did want to spray, if you had a lot of dandelions, you'd want to do it then. But again, the best time to do it is in the fall. What I really wanted to say, though, is if you have this is really an indicator of bad management. It's not really something that you should just say, oh, it's got dandelions. Why do you have the dandelions? You're probably not fertilizing properly. More than likely, you're mowing improperly. You're scalping. You're not mowing. You're mowing too short. And so if you have a dandelion, think, why do I have the dandelion? Not, how do I kill it right now? And then, hand pull in the meantime, street in the fall, but think about how to change your management to keep them away.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. All right, Lauren, we know what this is, and you go right ahead.
So I brought along tonight just a couple different types of cankers that you could see in the landscape as we're getting out there in the spring and everybody's still cleaning things up. If you haven't already, if you see any of these things, this is a black knot, which you may see on some of our prunus species, real common on the wild plums out there in nature, but you can see them in some cultivated stone fruits as well. And then we also have along another canker where it's a different style. This one's more swollen up and very obvious. This one is more just a color change. So you can see not really much difference in the size on the bark, but you can see that, I don't know how close we can get, but you can kind of see that lighter color. And if you look close in there, even you would see some little specks, which are the fruiting structures of that fungus. So this is Botryoidiplodia on one of our woody shrubs. But in either case, both of these are the sources of inoculum and spread, so that these diseases will continue. So as you're out in the yard, and if you're doing any cleanup still, just make sure you're pruning those out. With fungal cankers, go 3 to 5 inches below the affected area and cut that out, and that should get rid of it and really help reduce the amount of problems you have in the future.
Excellent. Thanks, Lauren. All right, Sarah, a broadleaf evergreen that forgot.
Yeah. You know, coming out of winter, we oftentimes see these kinds of symptoms on, this happens to be Mahonia, or excuse me, this happens to be, yes, Mahonia, right? And we also see it a lot on holly, so the evergreen hollies. And you know, what's happening here is just this plant was losing water too quickly in the winter, and it couldn't replace it fast enough. So we get these leaves dying back around the edges with this browning. So, you know, the best ways to control this are to make sure the plants are really well watered going into the fall. Make sure that you just really soak them down well so that they're well hydrated in the fall. You can also apply a little bit of extra winter mulch to try to hold that moisture in the soil and make sure that they have water to pull up in the winter if they need it. If you can make sure that they have a little snow around the base too, when we do get snows in the winter, as that snow melts, it will help to hydrate the plant and keep it from getting too dry. But I guess one thing that you wanted to avoid in the spring is you might be tempted to go in and to do some really severe pruning and to prune these branches back. But what I want you to see here is that the bud is still alive on this stem. In fact, this whole underlying stem is still alive. So I wouldn't get too aggressive and prune these branches out. These leaves that are affected may fall, and you may get some new foliage coming on, but you're certainly going to get new growth coming from this terminal bud. So don't get too aggressive with your pruning, thinking that these branches have died back, okay? It's just a consequence of this type of plant in our winter conditions.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. All right, so we are going to start with pictures.
Oh,
Fred,
okay.
you get the very first one.
Excellent.
We do not know where this viewer is from, but she said she found 3 of these hanging in a shrub or growing. She wasn't sure exactly what. She wants to know what they are and how to manage them.
Well, this is really an interesting specimen. I hope our viewers can kind of see that. So what this is, it's a standard, it's a bagworm, all right? But it was clearly feeding on juniper. And so all those berries, little seeds that you see, those are the juniper berries. And it's not uncommon for bagworms to move a distance from whatever their host was to complete their development. And so that's not unusual. So what I think happened, this is a bagworm that was feeding on a juniper bush that incorporated the berries, which is pretty common. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
All right, and not much to do about it this time of year.
Well, no,
Pick it off.
you could sort of pick it off. I mean, again, it's not causing any damage on that plant. For bagworms in general, we really want to treat them in the spring and sometime in May, before they get more than about a ½ an inch in length. That's the treatment timing.
Excellent.
Bifenthrin, permethrin work fine.
Excellent, thanks. All right, Bill.
Okay.
Buffalo grass.
Yeah.
Highly popular until it has this happening.
Yeah.
Which is the cool seasons, obviously.
Yeah, we get these cool season perennials in there, and normally buffalo grass is great because it goes so dormant, and so we could easily take care of it with Roundup, and that's what we do in a normal year. This is not that year. We were so warm, a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago, early March. We were a month ahead of schedule. The buffalo grass was starting to break dormancy, and so it's too late now. So if we went with Roundup or some other herbicide to try to kill out that cool season weeds inside our warm season buffalo grass, we're probably going to hurt that buffalo grass. And so this year, we're really limited on what we can do. Once the buffalo grass greens up, we just mow it. It will help blend in. It's just obvious right now. And then again, next winter, that's when you go out with that non-selective and help clean up all those perennials that are in there.
All right, thank you, Bill. Lauren, this is a Hastings viewer, and they've been using cypress mulch in their landscape. Works well for everything except apparently this big blue muffin viburnum, and they say it turns into a rock hard solid, we call them mulch pizzas. And then this starts to happen, and they're wondering what is going on with this. What's the cause of the bonding of the mulch, and is there anything they can do? Okay. And whether it's related to the viburnum or not is...
It may be, most likely not. It could be a fungus that came in with the soil, and I like the word mulch pizza. That's pretty good, Kim. I haven't heard it called that before, so that's awesome. So mulch pizzas are great. And what this is just the fungus growing between all that debris. It's trying to break the organic material in that mulch down, and it's forming a mycelial or fungal mat. Many times, though, those will be kind of hydrophobic. So when you're trying to water, you might see that water running off. And so if you can, probably the best thing you can do is kind of break that up. It's interesting that it's with cypress, because most of the time, our conifer-based mulches, cedar, cypress, anything in the zone of that, it's not as prone to these types of problems as soft bark mulches. So you did the right thing selecting a cypress mulch, but unfortunately you got a fungus that's able to digest it and break it up. So I would just kind of recommend breaking it up. There's not really anything I'd say to spray on it, but just be careful that you can still water your shrub. Excellent.
Thank you, Lauren. Sarah, several questions about this time of year in particular. This is a Lincoln viewer. They want to know how to protect the roots of this tree. It's a very big one, between street and sidewalk, same issues. They do say this one had rocks that held down landscape fabric for reasons unknown. And it's, of course, the exposed tree roots that have them concerned.
Sure. So, the best way to protect the roots would just be to mulch around the base of this tree. And the bigger of a mulch area you're willing to provide, the better it's going to be for the tree. So, and if you can eliminate a place where you need to mow and keep the mower away from those roots, then you'll prevent scalping off the tops of those roots and damage them, which could lead to wood rot entering into those roots. So I would go as big as you're willing to and create a mulch bed. Now you could also think about doing some shade perennials under there so that you can actually turn that whole area into like a shade garden and not have to have turf under there at all. And I think that would really be the best situation for this tree and for the health of its roots.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Well, even for Nebraska, mid-80s temperatures in March, followed by a snowstorm the next day, is a little bit more than we can take. So what's up with the crazy weather? We have university climatologist Ken Dewing saying it's possible we've got more coming. Here's Ken to explain.
The weather pattern of the winter was controlled by an unusually warm ocean. Oceans cover 70% of the surface of the Earth, so no wonder it influences our weather. A very warm ocean resulted in a very warm winter for not only the United States, but the 8th warmest winter on record for here in Nebraska. We also had a very wet winter. It was the 10th wettest winter on record for Nebraska. We've noticed as climatologists that the weather systems in the U.S. and especially in the Great Plains have become more variable over the last few years, resulting in extreme weather conditions, from last May's wettest month on record to some very dry conditions in the state, very warm temperatures this past winter, temperatures that reached the 80s in parts of Nebraska, but still plunged below zero with some snowstorms. This trend has been in existence now for well over a couple years, and we see no change in this. We expect another variable weather pattern continuing through spring and on into summer. We expect a trend to continue of warmer than normal temperatures, but in the background we've got a more extreme system. So we could still have, and we have a risk of below freezing temperatures in all of Nebraska well through the end of April into early May. So although we may come into summer with a statement that it was a warmer than normal spring, expect the risk of still some unseasonable cold spells because our system has become more extreme. We're drying out to our south and southwest, but at the same time, we're coming out of a drought period, so we have two factors going on. We're coming out of a drought period, which should result in wetter than normal conditions, but at the same time, we see an unusual drying already beginning to take place to our south and southwest. So the verdict at this point is unsure what the moisture conditions are going to be. We're comfortable with a warmer than normal summer ahead, but with more variable conditions, we still have a risk of freezes, very untimely freezes, as we go in through the rest of the month of April. There are always a series of major factors going on. One of them is climate change. So climate change is resulting in a warmer trend in our climate for Nebraska. There is also patterns where there's normal cycles of drought and wet, and we're coming out of a drought cycle into a wet cycle. There's also an observed increase in extremes in our climate system that we've noticed over the last few years, especially in our area, and actually in climate data over the last decade. All of these factors play independent of each other, which makes it difficult then, more difficult than it has been in the past, to anticipate what is the trend going to be going into spring and summer.
Let's hope we buck those trends, because I think most of us are really over that whole freeze-sweat cycle. And in any case, we do hope to hear from Ken again before the season's over, and we hope it's not during a tornado warning, which has kind of happened sometimes when we're sitting in these chairs. All right, Fred, this is a question from somebody about an interior insect.
Ooh, okay.
And this is the second year in a row they've had this during the summer, a little infestation of these small flying insects inside their house. They're attracted to light. They did use sticky paper that caught them, and it seems to be working, but they can't figure out where they're coming from.
Presumably this is a sticky paper that they captured these on. These turn out to be dark-winged fungus gnats, so fungus gnats. And it's pretty obvious where they're coming from. They're coming from the house plants. They feed in moist soil, and they're very common. And if that soil is over moist, the larvae develop there, and then the winged adults come out. So again, the key to this will be to reduce the watering of the plants. You know, if you have a saucer underneath that's holding the water, you need to eliminate that. Basically, let the plant dry out, like all the plants dry out, and it will help them take care of the problem. I mean, there are some products that you could use as a drench, like imidacloprid, but you know, again, just letting those plants dry out will basically solve the problem, you know, within just a few weeks, because you're still going to have some larvae in the soil, but they'll die.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Fred. All right, Bill. Question about crabgrass seedlings and crabgrass control and pre-emerge.
Yeah, well, part of this crazy year, right? I mean, normally we look for soil temperatures in the mid-50s at 4-inch depth, and then we'll start to see crabgrass germinating, and that's exactly what we saw this year, and that was in early March. Then it got cold, and a lot of those seedlings were killed as that temperature went well below freezing. And so now we're actually back outside of the crabgrass pre-emergent window. Soils are still a little bit cool. We're probably gonna have to wait a couple more weeks, maybe a week or so, you know, keep an eye on the soil temperatures, and then we'll figure out when those pre's need to go back out. So just one of those crazy years. We were well ahead of time. We made our pre-emergent applications. If we missed it, well, we were lucky, because that freeze killed all the crabgrass, and we're back on normal pace as it is.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Bill. Lauren, lots of questions on this one this year. This is actually from Norfolk, a viewer who established a new lawn by seed in 2015. The lawn was lush and green. As the snow melts, dead circles in the lawn, and the grass, he's saying, is dead. And it's only under the snow drifts. So what is it, and what do they do about it?
Well, and then there's another picture up now. So one of the things that happens when we have these great, temperature conditions where they're higher and then lower, and we get snow cover and extended snow cover with conditions where you may see some 50-degree days, it really fits well for snow mold. So the thing with this is, at this point right now, there's not really a lot that I'd recommend to do outside of just go through your normal lawn renovation, and you can do some seeding to thicken that. If you can do things, in the next year or through the winter to try to avoid snow cover and put things in to try to avoid buildup. It's so common to see this around driveways and areas where you have piles. And then we've got another picture now showing where, actually on this one, I was trying to figure out, I couldn't see it for sure, but sometimes you'll be able to see, the little microsclerotia of the fungus that causes it. So with that, you'll see that in the patch as well. So at this point, I'd really just recommend going in and thicken that up. I think Bill will just go ahead and go through the renovation, but in the winter months, try to avoid snow cover, and in the home lawn, I'm not going to recommend a fungicide for that.
It's probably not lethal, just looks bad during time of year.
Yep.
Excellent, thanks guys. Sarah, this is a Mitchell, Nebraska viewer. Planted a bare-root Stanley plum about 3 years ago. First year good. This year the trunk is apparently getting smaller at the bottom and bigger at the top. The tree is now 12 feet, had to stake it with a T-post. What in the world is going on, and is there any hope?
Yeah, this is a grafted tree, so we have two different plants that were joined here together to create this plant. And what's happening is the plant is failing at the graft union. And so it's not uncommon if the graft union is failing for the section above the graft to get bigger than the underlying trunk below it. And why did it fail? It could be that there was some physical damage there at the base or at the graft union that occurred at some point. It could be that the rootstock was not a very vigorous rootstock, or it could be that there was a planting depth issue and the rootstock is dying, whereas the top part is still alive at this point. But unfortunately, the long-term prognosis for this tree is not good. I think you're going to end up losing it, and you're going to want to replant. It's always a good idea, if you can, to plant trees that are on their own roots. That's not always possible, but if you can, it would eliminate this issue.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Well, we started our backyard farmer garden 7 years ago when we marked out a teeny little plot of land here on East Campus. Since then, we've had a couple of expansions, including last year's rain chain. So once again, each week, we're going to give you an update on our wonderful garden. And here's Nebraska Extension Horticulture Assistant Terry James to introduce us to the garden for the season.
We are looking forward to a great 2016 in the Backyard Farmer Garden. We've expanded our garden so we have a place to put all those vining crops that kind of took over the spaces last year. We've also added 5 new raised beds, which many of you saw on the winter show getting installed. We already have some cool season crops in those, so we're looking forward to seeing some of them grow and eating those. We also are trying out straw bale gardening this year. We have the straw bales out there waiting, and we're about ready to start getting those ready to be planted. We also have, as usual, our All-America Selection winners. We have 2 new tomatoes that will be going into the garden. We have a Candyland cherry tomato, and we also have the Chef's Choice green tomato. So we're looking forward to trying those 2 out. And then we have a new ornamental pepper, Black Hawk. We're looking forward to seeing how great that will look in some of our containers. We're looking at about 100 different varieties of plants going into our garden. We're adding a couple perennial vegetables too. We're planting some asparagus, and we may be planting some horseradish because we have not seen our horseradish come up this year. So this summer, make sure that you stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden, and we will look forward to seeing you and showing you our garden.
It is going to be so much fun this year. We are adding so many interesting new things. And of course, we always hope we have some things that go wrong. So you guys can also talk about what shouldn't happen in somebody's garden.
We like things that go wrong.
Exactly.
I know. Okay, Fred, this is a viewer, I'm not sure. Oh, Ralston, here we go.
Okay.
And the question is whether the big green tomato worm that he has every year on his tomatoes is the larval stage of the Cecropia moth, or is it the big green tomato worm?
Yeah, it's no, the tomato worm, the tomato sphinx, is in a totally different family than the Cecropia, which is a saturninid moth. So they're in totally different families. My guess is what they're seeing, if it's on tomato, would be a tomato hornworm.
Okay, which should be plucked and smashed.
Well, you can, sure, or enjoy them.
Yeah, right. Okay, Bill, a question about where people can get soil temp information. And again, what are the soil temps for putting down pre-emerge?
Yeah, so we use soil temperature to determine when pre-emergent applications should go down. We don't want to use things like, some people look at the forsythia when that blooms, and obviously that was a little bit misleading this year. So we want to go, in Nebraska, we have access to the High Plains Regional Climate Center, HPRCC.org, I'm pretty sure. And you can go and you can actually look at a state temperature map. And you want the 7-day average, and that's at a 4-inch depth. And you can actually just see how temperatures are progressing. And when you get that 7-day temperature, mid-50s to get in the 60, that's when that pre-emergent needs to go out. So again, we're probably a week or 2 early across most of the state.
All right, thank you, Bill. And it was really kind of a shocker when they went like this.
Yeah, crazy.
All right, Lauren, We don't know where this viewer is from, and we don't have a picture. So good luck, but apparently the pine is losing a lot of needles, and she's wondering what to do to stop that from happening.
A couple different things. So we get into this time of year sometimes, and just pretty soon we'll see white pines lose some needles naturally. So make sure that it is the newer growth. If it's inside, second year needles on the white pine, then you'd see some of those yellowing naturally and falling off. If it's a fungal disease, the ones depending on the pine and where we don't have a picture, we don't know. There are some needle casts, but most of the time we see those on spruce, but there are some that can affect pines as well. So really without trying to, those are all different on management. So really on that, I'd recommend maybe trying to take a sample into a local extension office or send something into the diagnostic lab so we know for sure what we're dealing with, because the timing on many of those diseases will be different for fungicide applications.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Sarah, we have a viewer who wants to use railroad ties for a garden bed, and how long before creosote is no longer an issue. She's had a bed in place for 20 years, and they're going to replace the top 20 inches of soil, wondering if that will be safe.
You know, we had vegetable beds all my growing up years made out of railroad ties, and I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me now. But I think we've gotten a lot more conservative, you know, in recent years and steering away from railroad ties. But we always used to recommend that if they were well aged, whatever that means, if they were dry, if the creosote was dry and it wasn't fresh, then they would be safe to use. Another way that you could get around that would be to just line the inside of the bed, so that if you used some plastic, some heavy mill plastic, and just put it up against the wood so that your plants aren't actually, you know, up against the wood and the soil isn't, and then just staple that in place, you know, that could provide pretty good protection too. So, you know, I'm not sure that you really need to go to the extent of removing 20 inches of soil. That's a lot of work.
No kidding.
I would, and if you're going to rebuild, you know, and you don't want to use railroad ties, then I would just use any of the wood products you can get at the lumber store that are not treated with arsenic. They, you know, the copper chromated arsenic treated wood actually really isn't even available to the homeowner market anymore. So any of the newer types of treated wood should be fine for you to use on your raised bed. But I don't know if you need to take out 20 inches of soil. That's a lot of work.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Well, it is time for a short break. Coming up on our show, we'll have Gladys's Plant of the Week, first one of the year, and the lightning round. Stay tuned for more Backyard Farmer right after these messages. Welcome back to Backyard Farmer. Coming up later on the program, we're going to hear from Sarah about how to plant and care for bare root plants. You can still phone in your questions, dial 1-800-676-5446. While you're doing that, we'll start the lightning round. So I forgot about Plant of the Week. Are we doing Plant of the Week first? Let's do Plant of the Week after lightning round. Okay. You can tell it's the first show of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Sarah, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, this person has tulips that only have their leaves, no flower buds at all. Is there anything they can do?
No. And make sure that they're in good full sun so that those bulbs develop enough energy to develop flower buds next year.
All right. Scotts Bluff in the Panhandle, do the nice edible sweet cherries do all right out there, or should they try something different?
Sweet cherries don't do well in Nebraska, just generally speaking. They do even worse in the Panhandle, so I wouldn't put them there.
All right. Why are the shrub roses in so many locations so scrawny and thin this year? Any idea?
You know, they have had a lot of winter injury on them the last couple of years, and I think one thing you can do to help prevent that from happening is don't trim them back short in the fall. They don't need to be trimmed like hybrid teas. You want to leave them taller like a shrub rose, and then only cut out winter-killed stems or thin out stems as needed in the spring.
Excellent. When is it time to prune those beautiful forsythias?
Forsythias right after they're done blooming. So here in another week and a half, 2 weeks will be a good time to start.
All right. Is it okay to dig and move peonies right now?
Yeah, I would say as soon as they start to grow and you can see those new shoots coming up, you could dig them up and move them.
All right, excellent. Nice job, nice recovery, all of us. We're thinking, whoa, what's supposed to happen next? All right, Lauren. Ready? Lunch
like
meats.
jalapeno bologna tonight.
Okay, everything else is early this spring, it seems, in a lot of locations. How about those morels?
Not early yet. No reports in Nebraska. Somebody may have some, but nothing yet.
All righty. We have a viewer who had ash rust terribly last year. Can they expect to have it this year, or is it very weather dependent?
Very weather dependent. One thing with ash rust, look for some of the native grasses that we put in our landscape. Some of those can be hosts, so check for the proximity of those in your landscape.
All right, is it too late or early to treat for cedar apple rust, apple scab sorts of things?
We are in the window right now for flowering crabs and fruit trees that, that spray program needs to be started.
Okay, we have a viewer who had a fungus in their lawn in the summer, not snow mold. Should they treat that? And if so, when and with what?
Oh, sure. That's so open-ended. That could be anything. So we got to get to a specific on that. Pass. That counts, though, because we spent too much time talking about it.
Okay, do we have sudden oak death here yet? Have you seen that in the diagnostic clinic?
Don't think so, but if anybody knows, please comment. I haven't seen it yet that I know of.
We
I
haven't
haven't been
either.
keeping up
Yeah,
on it.
it's across the fingers on
Very
that
good.
one. Yeah, we're hoping you said no.
It will be here eventually.
Maybe.
All things come eventually.
All things. All right. Are you ready, Bill?
I'm ready.
Are we recommending aerating in the spring or any time for homeowners anymore? And if so, when and how?
If it's compacted, like areas you walk around a lot, then yeah, it still can help. And if you're looking for a vertical aerator is best, but if you have to use a rotating tine, that's what you have to use.
All right. Is it too early in the majority of the state to overseed a thin lawn?
No, we're just getting into that time now. So if we're going to overseed, do it now, but you want to do it in the spring, maybe 1, 2, 3 different times, just to put your eggs out of one basket or whatever they say.
All right. There's a new buffalo grass, we believe.
Yes.
What is its
Sundancer. That's our new buffalo grass, Sundancer, from the University of Nebraska Buffalo Grass Breeding Program.
And is it available?
Yes, and we have a lot of seed now for it. We were low last year.
Awesome.
2
Excellent.
points.
Is it possible to control brome near fescue on an acreage without moving?
You can use tenacity, frequent applications, it might help, and you probably would want to have like a buffer strip between the grasses.
All right. Okay.
Oh,
Well, we're going to give you 2
come
for the
on.
buffalo grass because that was kind of sort of a double, right? All right.
No.
You ready, Fred? Apple maggot. When do you treat for that?
You need to treat that before they lay their eggs. Okay, so just when the apples are small and pretty, if you see and use the little red sears to trap them, that would be the time to treat. You got to get them before they get their eggs in the
apple.
Yeah.
All righty. Is it too late to treat for scale on euonymus?
No, we're coming up. Again, you just wait for the crawlers.
All right. We have a viewer with ants in the dishwasher.
Uh-oh.
What to do about that?
I like the taro bait stations and the ones that attract both protein and sugar feeding ants. Just put out some bait stations, and it might take a few days, but you'll get rid of them.
Okay. Do we have a prediction for the insect population based on our weird winter?
Heavy.
We have apples flowering, but this viewer has not seen any pollinators flying. Is this going to be an issue with the apple crop?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's lots of them out there in my orchard.
All right. Is EAB here yet?
No, very close. Very, very close.
Dr. Baxendale with the win.
Exactly. All right, nice job. Okay, Sarah, now we're ready for you and I who got it wrong.
Well, I think Gladys is also excited about spring because she brought us 3 different flower samples tonight. She said she just couldn't choose because she had so much blooming in her garden. So the first one we have here is this little flower in front. This is a viburnum. This is Korean spice viburnum, Viburnum carlesii, and we were just commenting during the break about how nice this smells. It really has a nice fragrance to it. And these are great shrubs. They will get to be, 6 to 7 feet, maybe unpruned, although they can easily be pruned and kept in, a smaller size. And during the summer, it's just a nice green shrub with these little red berries, and it's very ornamental. She also brought us some flowering almond, which are these little stems back here. So flowering almond is a small tree, a small ornamental tree, not native to North America. It actually comes from China and that part of the world, but very pretty blooming ornamental tree. Then she also brought us these pinkish purple flowers here. You can see that right there. That is a PJM rhododendron. Rhododendron is another broadleaf evergreen, like the plant we looked at earlier. And so they do need a little bit of extra protection in the winter. And these will grow into a nice sized shrub, usually 4 to 5 feet, something like that. And bloom really early in the spring, obviously. So she brought us another great collection of plants here.
Which,
added to the landscape.
We are always so grateful.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, you have the next picture, Fred.
Okay.
This is a viewer who wonders what in the world was on their ash trees last year, excuse me, and whether it will happen again, and can they do anything about it?
Right. Well, what's obvious, so those are ash flower galls. And again, they are caused by a tiny mite that lays its eggs in the male flower, so in male trees, seedless trees. Again, the good news is that they don't cause any injury to the tree whatsoever. So they're essentially harmless, but certainly they aren't aesthetically pleasing. And if we can get a quick shot of this. So the picture we just looked at, came from last summer, but this is what they look like right now. And so they're ugly, and if you touch them, they just sort of fall apart like this. So again, it's not very attractive. They will fall off in the spring when the trees start to bud out, but again, they cause no harm to the tree whatsoever. So I guess that falls under the category of all wondrous pageantry, right?
All right, we were waiting for that one. Okay, Bill, we've seen this a lot around Lincoln. And it would be new seed that is put down with some sort of green pelleted something or other. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
We've worked with it a little bit, and we can see that products like this, sometimes they can be like a gel, sometimes this is like a paper product. They can help if you can't get water on your new seedlings to help keep some moisture there. The best thing you can do if you have an irrigation system, or you even have something you can just hook onto your hose end that you can set to run a couple times a day when you're at work, that's going to be a better way of keeping that seedling moist. But if you don't have that, you don't have access to water, those little products can help to keep the seedlings moist and help them germinate this time of year.
All right, thank you, Bill. Lauren, a viewer with an evergreen that has kind of some dead limbs near the top of the tree, right up there, and they want to know what the cause potentially could be, and is there anything they can do about it short of pruning them out?
Yeah, so when you see a tree like this, you really got to kind of get up to the affected area and take a close look and see if one of two things is going on. Even something like porcupine damage or something up in a tree, depending on where this is at, can cause that. So you can have physical injury to it. The other thing that's more common is probably something like the Batrao canker I showed earlier on the show, where you can get that canker affecting it. So you may see some discoloration, you may see a zone on the trunk that's got a lot of pitch coming out, but in either case, you just want to kind of look at that and see if that's like that. Usually if everything's brown like that, it's not winter injury, so it's probably not going to come back. But just in case you're not sure, I would wait a little while. Then if it doesn't come out, you will have to prune it and start a new leader.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Sarah, this is an Omaha viewer who moved into a new house last fall, and they're having all the fun of new plants occurring. And this one came up and stumped them. Mm-hmm. They're wondering what it is and what do we do about it?
Sure.
Besides enjoy.
This is actually a nice perennial ornamental plant called Virginia bluebells. Mertensia is the genus name. And obviously it's an early spring plant. It likes to bloom early in the year, and it likes more like woodland locations, partial shade to shade with good moist soil, preferably with some good organic matter content in it. So it'll bloom with these, actually the buds are pink and then the flowers open up to blue, which is kind of unusual. So it'll be blooming for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they will go dormant fairly quickly in the early part of the summer. And so the plants will kind of die back and you won't really be able to see them again until next year. So it's nice to interplant them maybe where there are some other perennials that'll come up later in the year that will kind of cover these bare spots where the Virginia bluebells were early in the season. And they grow from underground rhizomes. So if you want to propagate them, then you could do some division and move them around that way.
All right. All righty. So we need to go to, I believe, a picture question, perhaps?
Okay.
Or a regular question. Let's do a regular picture, another picture. Let's do the Bee Hotel.
Okay, this
We
is,
have a question about the Bee Hotel. So our very own Tom Weisling has built. Tell us about bee hotels and solitary bees.
okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put these out in the backyard farmer garden. And so they'll be available out there. And again, solitary bees can use these nesting sites, these habitats, bee hotels, as Tom would call them, to produce nests. And there are, if you notice, and if you look at the holes, you can see that there are a variety of different diameters, some large ones for like things like leafcutter bees, smaller ones for mason bees, and a whole other host of solitary bees that are present in our landscapes that we most of the time don't even see. So, you know, this is a wonderful concept. And again, there are already some in the backyard farmer garden, and we'll be adding more in the near future.
All right, and I believe we have a neb guide.
Yes.
And we'll link that to our website and everything else that we have
Excellent.
going on. With
Excellent,
that as
because
well.
this is a, you know, how to build, constructing a solitary bee hotel. You know, this is a really good publication. Again, our own Tom Weisling is the author on this.
Awesome, excellent. Bill, you get another picture question here. This is a viewer that has two different people have sent two different pictures that look pretty much exactly the same. And they're both saying they came up, they look pretty, but are they a weed? And one of them thinks this is poison hemlock. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with them. It's poison hemlock. In the sap, it is toxic, especially to livestock, but it can also be irritating to you. So if you want to pull that, you know, put gloves on. You don't want to burn it because you don't want that toxin to get into the air. But it's definitely what it is. It's biennial plant rosette first year, and then it will bolt up with a white flower the next year.
Okay, so one of those things that, you know, beautiful but deadly.
Yeah, it's nature for you.
All righty. Let's see, Lauren, I guess you get another picture question, and this is yet another spruce question. We're not sure where this, Grand Island, halfway between Hastings and Grand Island. So one of the 15 to 20-year-old blue spruce started showing needle loss last year. Over the course of the winter, the damage is now looking like this. They have 15 others in a series of questions. Is it disease? Is it insect? Can it be treated? What are its chances? And will it spread to everything else?
Yes, maybe, let's see. So,
Not fair.
well, it's just, you know, trees like this, it can be really difficult. So when we see a spruce, you know, it's probably the way that looks a needle cast disease. That's going to be my guess on it. But with this, so you sure have the right management, I would really recommend, you know, taking a sample into the extension office, sending some to the clinic. Needle cast disease can be very difficult to manage. So in the meantime, though, I would avoid, if you have irrigation in the landscape, avoid those heads hitting the lower branches. It looked like that was in the lower portion of the tree, which is common also for our needle cast. These are fungal diseases favored by moisture. So if you can avoid that as those new needles develop and emerge, you know, and start to elongate, then that's where we're at a stage where we want to protect them. But again, I would be really careful, because I hate to recommend a full treatment strategy on a tree like that when we're not sure exactly what it is. But it looks like it could be a needle cast, and it would spread.
Okay, and I do know they've been in, you know, they have been in previous years in drought in Grand Island, so that
Well, and that's the other thing.
doesn't help
So
either.
drought-stressed spruce many times succumb to some of our canker diseases, which could also cause needle thinning. So, you know, we want to make sure we're on the right track.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Sarah, we have, this is actually a Lincoln viewer who pruned her river birch a few weeks ago, and of course now it's bleeding all over the place. She's worried about it, and then we've had other people comment about maples, yellowwood. You want to talk about the bleeders?
Yeah, there are a group of trees that will do this quite commonly in the spring. Like you said, the river birch, silver maple is another one that will do this quite a bit. So it's not really that serious of a problem. The sap that the tree is losing was meant for those branches that are gone. And so the tree isn't going to exsanguinate itself. It's not going to lose all of its sap and dry out and die. It can be messy. It can sometimes attract insects to the sap. But generally speaking, it's not a serious problem, and it'll stop on its own as soon as those cut cells callus themselves off, and the sap has pretty much moved all its way up the tree, and the tree is leafed out. This will stop. So it's not really a serious problem. So don't be too worried about it.
All right, just go look at something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you're unfamiliar with bare root plants, they kind of look like a stick with roots. Nothing to be afraid of. In fact, right now is actually the optimal time to plant those perennials and woody plants that are bare root. Here's Sarah to tell us how to do it.
One thing that's unique to the early spring garden is working with bare root plants. You might buy bare root plants from mail order nursery, or you may get them at a garden center. But either way, they're going to come to you with their roots packed in damp sphagnum moss or possibly damp newspaper. Once you purchase your plants, open those bags and inspect the root system. Make sure that the roots are still moist. If they're not, then add some water and re-wet them. Plants need to stay cool and moist until you're ready to plant them. And ideally, your plants should not have started growing by the time you are getting them in the ground. If they've started to bud out and put out some foliage, then you'll need to protect that growth if any cold weather or frost come, or you might have a little bit of dieback on that foliage. Once you're ready to get your plants in the ground, soak the roots in a bucket of water. For woody plants or perennials, 10 to 20 minutes is good. If you're working with small fruit trees, you can even leave the plants in a bucket of water for a few hours. This will help to rehydrate the root system and get them off to a good start once they're in the ground. But don't leave them in the water too long. You certainly don't want to leave them in water overnight, or you might actually end up causing some root dieback. When you're ready to plant, dig a wide, shallow planting hole. You want it to be wide enough to encompass the width of the roots without having to bend them or shove them into the planting hole. Create a mound in the center of the planting hole, and place your plants on the top of the mound, draping the roots down the sides. Then gently backfill soil around the root system and firm it up so that your plants are nice and secure in the ground. If the root system is small, then make sure you plant it at a depth so that the first roots are just below the soil surface. Once they're in place, give them a good deep watering and really soak that soil and that root system down. Finally, apply a 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch around the plants. This will help to conserve the soil moisture and help to get your plants off to a good start.
That technique of building a little mound, spreading out those roots, and then covering them up with soil and mulch also does help those plants stand upright after you water them. And sometimes those roots can be a little bit out of whack when they come out of the packaging, but it really is a great method to get your perennials and some of those woody plants off to a good start. And actually on campus, that's the way everything used to come before containers were apparently so popular. All right, Fred, a Douglas, Nebraska viewer thinks her 30-foot bed of asparagus is being killed by asparagus beetles. Do you want to talk about the life cycle on those right now for a minute?
That could be occurring. Okay, so asparagus beetles overwinter as adults. And in the spring, they go in and they lay their eggs on the spears that are coming up. And again, there'll be this kind of brown, these sort of gray eggs on the spears. They also feed on the foliage and can be a bit of a problem. So again, control, 7 works very well. It's a beetle. If you want to, organically, you can go in and try to sweep them off or just knock them to the ground. But again, they're in that environment. So it's going to be difficult to control them organically.
All right, thank you, Fred. Bill in North Platte viewer has Rock's favorite grass coming in from the neighbor.
Yeah.
Zoysia, what
right.
to do? Move.
Yeah, there's not really a heck of a lot you can do. You can just try to use a non-selective. You can try to break it up with some plantings that you have to separate your lawn from their lawn. But that lawn in the summer is going to outcompete the cool season grasses, and it's going to keep moving on in. So it's something you're going to fight continually.
All right. Lauren, this is actually an ag question. But it's
Awesome.
soybeans, which some of us eat if they're, slightly differently.
I spent a little time in a soybean field.
Yeah, just a little. They want to know whether you can treat soybeans with a fungicide when the weather is warm. Good idea, bad idea?
Yes, I'd avoid any foliar treatments when you're over, in at 98-degree real hot days, because some of the surfactants associated with any of our treatments can burn plants. So just be careful when it's really hot, but I wouldn't worry about it until you're 98 or above.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Sarah, Omaha viewer wants to know, she or he has a 2-year-old peach, started from seed. Any general care suggestions?
Well, so for a young fruit tree like this, you'd want to think about getting it off to a good start structurally. So making sure that it has a good central leader, at least until it reaches about, say 28 to 30 inches tall. Then you're going to prune off the top to try to start to develop that open vase system that we typically use with peaches. So depending on how tall it is, for right now, you just want it to have some good secondary branches and foliage so that it's photosynthesizing well and it's growing nice and vigorously. Eventually, all those branches on it now will come off as it gets taller and you develop the canopy. So also protect it. Well, it's probably a little bit too young for boars, but make sure there isn't any wildlife damage, any rabbits chewing on the stems. Just basic good care like that. Make sure it stays well watered. Provide it with some mulch in the summer. Those types of things.
Baby it along for a little bit.
Yeah, just keep it healthy until it can get a little bigger.
Okay, peachy, so to speak. Okay, announcements. We have a couple of them, and our viewers know that we let you send us things. So the Douglas Sarpy Master Gardeners are having a Creating Herb and Succulent Containers and Concrete Leaves workshop. Saturday the 16th at 9:30 in the morning at the Extension Office at West Center Road in Omaha, so that ought to be a lot of fun. And then the Spring Affair, number 30, coming up Saturday, April 23rd, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., Lancaster Event Center in Lincoln, with a number on the screen if people want more information on that one. So, fun things. We have just a little bit of time, maybe a minute. Fred, somebody wants to know how in the world to get rid of the earthworms.
You don't. You don't. Earthworms are so important. They aerate the soil, they break down the thatch, they serve as an important food source for wildlife. So, I don't recommend controlling them.
All right, we need them for our turtles in our pond, too.
Yeah,
so, there
absolutely.
You
Go fishing.
go fishing. All right, Bill. Omaha viewer wants to know how and when to kill wild violets in the lawn.
Use triclopure
In
in the fall. Yeah.
Or
Sorry.
don't.
Yeah.
Or don't.
Or
Another
don't,
don't. Right. All right, Lauren. A viewer with red twig dogwood has seen little tiny white lines that look an awful lot more like they belong there than like a disease. Anything to treat lenticels on the twigs, it looks like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't worry about that then if those are just the normal openings in the stem. So, but watch your dogwoods for cytospora canker, which is very common.
All right, Sarah, 10 seconds or less. We have a viewer with 6 asparagus plants and not getting enough asparagus from them. What can they do?
You could divide them if they're big enough, or you could plant some more. That's about all you need to do.
Exactly. And I think I'd be going for the planting more if I were that viewer.